Good to have you with us on this Monday edition of Schultz News and Commentary as we roll it into the Holy Week of Christmas, and I'm certainly excited about that. So we'll be here this week and off next week, and I appreciate you listening and whatnot. I did an interview the other day with a reporter from NPR, and I gave him almost 40 minutes of my time. It was rather in-depth about working at RT and all the things that have surrounded my career move after being at MSNBC and being out of it for a few months and then back into it. And I'm concluding my first year at RT America as the news anchor at 8 o'clock. And it was, I thought, a very good interview. In fact, we posted it on our website at wegoted.com, and you can see the entire interview there. But I was really disappointed in this reporter, and I'm not going to say his name for a number of different reasons. I'm going to communicate with him first before I start saying his name. But I've never been so professionally slighted in my life. I've never had an interview that I've done, and for one thing, you've heard me say in the past, I don't understand the media covering the media anyway. But for some reason, the Washington Post is chasing me for an interview. I don't want to talk to them. I got my own website and I got my own show, and you can figure it out. I do a podcast every day. I think the audience knows who I am. If we want promotion, I guess we'll go buy it somewhere. But the fact is, I trusted this guy at NPR, and he twisted some things that I said and took answers from one question and put it over in an area of his report in a totally different subject, which flat out pissed me off. And it was unprofessional. It was backstabbing. It was not right. I was misled. I thought it was going to be a lengthy interview of at least 10 minutes of just the guy was so bent on doing an interview and doing a feature, quote, on Ed for NPR. And so I just want you to know that the entire interview, we posted it, and I wish that NPR would post the entire interview, but I guess that's not their agenda. And there's clearly this guy was on an agenda. If I had known that he was going to bring up previous anchors who have left RT, I would have never talked to him. If I had known that he was going to bring up things outside what we talked about, I would have never talked to him. But that's what happens when you trust people, and that's why I'm high on what I'm doing at RT, because we play the lengthy interview. We don't do the 20-second sound bites. We tell both sides of the story. I'm very proud of the journalistic work that we're doing, and you can be the judge all you want. I've taken a lot of heat on Facebook because this is funded in portion by the Russian Federation. There's also advertising, and there's also fundraising that takes place. So we're funded the same way as the BBC. All of that aside, it's content that counts. And I get my back up when I hear that it's propaganda. Is it propaganda when we go to Flint, Michigan, and you can't drink the water? Is it propaganda when we go cover the pipeline in North Dakota, giving a voice to the Native Americans who've got some concerns about the environment? I mean, the list could go on and on. Is it propaganda when we're covering police brutality on the black community in America and right in the middle of all of it in Baltimore? I mean, come on. And now I see that the Democrats, this is front and center, that we're the big problem. That's the Russia is the big problem, and it's the RT network across America that is, quote, responsible for Trump being elected. Can you imagine that? That was said on another cable network just a few days ago, that it's RT that propped up Donald Trump. Donald Trump did one interview on RT America, and that was with Larry King, and he caught a bunch of shit for doing that. We never, not one time, broke into programming and covered Donald Trump. We never broke into the 8 o'clock news and covered Trump. We covered it in the news, and we took sound bites, but we didn't give them 1 hour of unfettered, uninterrupted conversation at the podium on the campaign trail the way all the networks did. But it's Russia's problem that Trump got elected. You know, Trump, the Russians and RT America did not tell Hillary Clinton, don't go to Wisconsin. We didn't screw up the Democratic voting and the lack of turnout in the state of Michigan. And so I just take offense at all of this. The journalism in this is the fact that Trump did not get preferential treatment on RT. And we have the videotape to prove it. We interviewed Bernie Sanders, I believe, 4 times through the campaign. I got one-on-ones with Bernie. We constantly asked the Clinton campaign for access and never got it. And the reason being they wanted to use RT as a whipping post for their problems. And that's really what it comes down to. And so here's what we have. We have the FBI and the CIA not on the same page about the hacking, whoever did it. Putin says over the weekend, show me the evidence or shut up. He says that to Obama. Obama comes out and makes a statement saying that he's going to retaliate on the Russians, but the public probably won't know it. Okay, so that's really good for relations, isn't it? I'm just infuriated by all this, and it's completely unnecessary. We're going to cover Donald Trump in the news because he's the president of the United States. Am I going to agree with his policies? Probably 90% of the time, no. But I'm going to call balls and strikes on the news with Ed at 8 o'clock because that's my job now. I don't give commentary on RT unless I'm on another program. But you get it straight and both sides right there at 8 o'clock Eastern time, Monday through Thursday, 30 minutes of uncut news. And that's the way we do it. Now, the Democrats are trying to figure out what's wrong with their party. At least that's what I'm hearing here in the middle of the country. Turn on any talk show and you think the Democrats have completely imploded and can't put this whole thing back together. So they're back to square one, trying to figure out who's going to be the DNC chair. How do they get the middle of the country to pay attention to them? And my advice is, well, why don't you go talk to Bernie Sanders? Bernie won all those states. He won Wisconsin. He won Michigan. He wasn't supposed to win them, but he did. He won North Dakota. He won some other states in the Midwest. And so I think that Bernie, he motivated millions of people to match the Clinton machine in fundraising. He probably has a couple of good ideas to rebuild the party and get, quote, this revolution or movement going, the ones that the Clintons made fun of. And so how does it all get put back together? That's my question today on this production. I want to turn to Ruth Conniff, who is the editor of the Progressive magazine in Wisconsin, and they do fabulous work. I got some material from the Progressive in the last few days, and Ruth, I want to commend you on the unbelievable work that you folks do of teaching young people the principles of government and also working with them when they want to speak their opinion on writing editorials and countering back against the right-wing machine. Good on your part.
Thanks,
You bet. Good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
Okay, so take us to square one. Where do the Democrats go from here? Where's the progressive movement start over?
Oh, wait, we have a long hill to climb, I'm afraid. One nice thing about working at the Progressive magazine is that since we've been around for more than 100 years, you can look back into our archive, and I have bound volumes of the magazine going back through the McCarthy era and see that we've been in these kinds of dark times before. So, the progressive movement in this country has been knocked down and has regrouped, and I think that's where we are right now. And I think some of that discussion specifically from the McCarthy era is particularly relevant because we're looking at a right-wing authoritarian government on the rise. As McCarthy was a right-wing authoritarian, and that strain in American politics has always been there. Joe McCarthy came out of Wisconsin, where we're based, and it's interesting you just mentioned Bernie Sanders. He had a town hall meeting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which for the first time in 40 years voted for a Republican candidate for president this year in the general election, and he had a panel with some Trump voters. And it's so interesting to see how tippy, the political opinion in the country is, that you have people who supported Bernie Sanders in the primary and then voted for Donald Trump in the general election, who, have a combination of a sense of great inequality and an openness to Sanders' socialist message, and also just a visceral distrust of professional politicians and an inclination to kind of throw it all up in the air with Donald Trump. So I think what the progressive movement needs to do is recapture labor solidarity, recapture some of those folks who voted for Donald Trump, who are, working class people who have seen their incomes and kids' futures erode and are really anxious and worried about the global economy and the way it's shaping up for them, and bring together this, sort of clear-eyed progressive coalition that's about economic equality and a better future and providing some safety net and some basic floor on what can happen to people in the richest country on earth.
It just sounds to me like you're saying the progressive movement's got to get back and get brilliant on the basics.
Yeah.
And if you're brilliant on the basics and you get people recognizing what kind of future they want, they may not fall prey to promotional sayings such as "we're going to make America great again."
Yeah.
I don't think it was too deep a message on the part of Trump. In fact, I think it was simple, easy to consume, and there were a lot of promises made. And now, before he even gets inaugurated, we could get a real snapshot. His cabinet's very military-oriented. And his cabinet is also anti-climate change. There's a lot of oil in that cabinet. Is this an opening for the progressive movement?
Yeah, it's on the climate stuff is the most alarming because we just don't have a lot of padding there. We really can't afford to march backwards with a climate denier in charge of the EPA, but that's what we're going to be dealing with. So I think, grassroots activism is going to be more important than ever. I think we need to have a much clearer message. We need to have a very broad message. We all live on this planet. We really cannot throw it away. And I think part of the formula for having a backlash election in the midterm and beginning to build a stronger progressive movement that unites people on racial justice and economic justice and environmental protection is going to be, really reaching out to the working class people who are going to find that Trump has picked a labor secretary who opposes the minimum wage, opposes sick leave, and would like to replace his own workers with robots. This is not going to be a pro-worker administration, and we need to figure out on the progressive side how we have a strongly pro-worker and pro-environment coalition.
Is there anything that the progressive movement, Democrats, can do to make sure that the basics are followed in the campaign? I've read a lot of material on how Clinton lost Michigan and how there was such a big disconnect between, quote, the home office, the state offices, and the district workers. And this is in the information age when it's supposed to be so easy to communicate with people. I just think that's a travesty that what was happening on the ground was not being communicated to or received with any kind of respect or dignity or understanding from those who were at the top calling the shots in the Clinton campaign. They thought they knew more, but they didn't. They thought they had a better ground game, but they didn't. Mm-hmm. They thought they had the right message, but they didn't. You can go right down the list. There just seems to be, there just can't be that disconnect and work the ground to motivate people to work. And in the middle of all of that, she didn't talk to those folks and the Democrats didn't talk to those folks that take a shower after work. And traditionally, they're in the Democratic camp. They're in the progressive wheelhouse. And now the challenge is to get them back. And if Trump steps in and lives up to even half of his promises and has something to run on, this could be a real generational fight. I want your thoughts on all that.
I think it is going to be a generational fight, and I think, clearly Hillary Clinton was never a credible candidate of the working class or progressives. She switched some positions. She adopted some Bernie Sanders positions during the election campaign, both in the primary and the general election, but, it didn't feel real, particularly on trade, and that ended up being a very important issue in the industrial Midwest, as anyone could have pointed out it would be. I think what's going to happen is people are going to be in a really, really tough situation in this country. And it's unnecessary because we have tremendous wealth in this country. It's just concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. But people who cannot afford to send their kids to college, who are living paycheck to paycheck, scrambling among service sector jobs, are going to really find themselves needing to organize to protect their own rights. And the Democratic Party, if it can be a vehicle for those people's aspirations, will grow stronger by connecting with them. But first, there's just going to be this grassroots upheaval. And, I don't think that it's going to be driven by the people who are plotting the next national campaign for the Democrats, the people who did not come to Wisconsin during the Wisconsin uprising against Scott Walker and who felt that they had it all figured out, as you point out. From far away. I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a huge movement from below, and that the Democratic Party, if it's going to serve the interests of ordinary working people, is going to be taken over by those people.
Ruth Conniff, Progressive Magazine, with us. At the time of the recording of this podcast, the Electoral College is voting, and they won't finish voting until 3 o'clock Eastern. And there may be people who don't commit to Donald Trump after he won, quote, a state or what state or whatever. The fact is he may come up short of 270 and may be a real statement made by some Electoral College members. But the fact of the matter is I would be completely floored beyond heart attack if the House of Representatives, which it will go to if he does not get 270, if the House of Representatives did not select Trump to be president of the United States. So, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by almost 3 million more people, 2.8 million. But the fact is it looks like Trump's going to be the president. And we've seen a real conversation and debate break out about the Electoral College. Is this just rubber stamping, or is this really a vehicle to make sure that someone who is not qualified and not fit to be president be firewalled by the process? What do you think, Ruth?
Well, it's interesting that there's two completely contradictory arguments. One is that the Electoral College is simply anti-democratic, which it is, because if we went with the popular vote in this country, we wouldn't have a Trump presidency. And all of these appointments to the cabinet, which are such a punch in the gut and are going to set our nation back on so many fronts, would not be happening. So There's the move to simply abolish the Electoral College or to persuade its members to ratify the popular vote, which means not ratifying the electoral vote in each of their states, but just going with the nationwide popular vote. Give California a ton of power, reduce the power of some of the less populous western states, but, give us a president who reflects the will of the overall will of the people. Then there's the argument, it's just the opposite. Okay, Donald Trump won. However, he's completely unqualified and has contempt for the Constitution. Let's stop this disaster before it happens. And I have been turning down more queries than I can count from people who have their own theories about how maybe John Kasich could come out as president of the United States from this process. Not likely. There's a whole lot of wishful thinking going on. And I think, what we're going to see today is the Electoral College is going to do what it's expected to do and ratify the Trump presidency, and then we're in for a tough 4 years.
Ruth Conniff, always a pleasure. Great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Great to be with you, Ed.
You bet. Progressive Magazine. Been around, I forgot that. I knew that, but it escaped me. Over 100 years. Amazing, amazing work. They do great work. They go to their website, and they're training young progressive minds on how to get in the sound and literal culture to fight back against the right-wing ideology in this country. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.
Hey folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today.
It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns.
It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor.
They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up.
And the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.